Hi, this is Dan Sullivan, and this is Exponential Wisdom with my great scout explorer of the technological and exponential world, Peter Diamandis. Peter.
Hey, Dan.
Great seeing you here. It's
Always.
Great looking. And we're cross country, as usual, from Toronto to LA. Peter, one of the things I'd like to talk about today is something that goes right back to the very early stages of our working relationship. The topic, of course, the creation was Abundance 360, but there was also put into a framework of 25 years that the A360 project would develop systematically with the thought it would go exponential, but there would be a 25-year framework for it.
Do you remember when and where that was?
Yes, I do. I do. It was at Genius Network, and you were about 5 minutes away from going up on stage and introducing Abundance 360 to all of Joe's community. And I sauntered over to you and I says, Peter, if you really want to make this stick, why don't you tell him you're going to do it for 25 years?
And what did I do?
Then you went up on stage, and about 10 minutes later, actually said that in a way that it seemed like it was your idea.
Exactly. I know a great idea when I hear it. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's a great idea. This should be a 25-year journey. And I went up on stage, like you said, took full ownership of it. And of course, I credit you for it. But it's changed the way I think about my life. And for those who want to understand how that presents itself, A360 was always something I would do and I would imagine I would do for some number of years, but I never put a number on it. And then when I said, I'm going to do it for 25 years, that, when you do the math, takes us out through like 2038. And oh my God, thinking about what the world is going to be like in the year 2038 is extraordinary, especially in exponential terms, right? Mm-hmm. You're close to 100 million doublings out. So it's changed the way I think about things, because I know that every year A360 becomes sort of a central organizing principle in my life that I spend all year getting ready for it. And I also don't have to take the entire journey in one step. I've got 25 years to pace myself and really deliver value to my incredible membership.
Yeah, and the other aspect about that, and this 25-year framework is the foundation for our 10 times program in Strategic Coach. One of the things, I was just talking to Peter before we went on with this podcast, and I said, I've coached entrepreneurs since 1974, and they have really big goals that freak them out. But when I began to examine what the freakout factor about the really large goals was, it wasn't the size of the goal that freaked them out, is that they immediately in their mind committed themselves to an absolutely unreasonable deadline to get it done. And it was actually the closeness of the deadline that was freaking them out. So I said, well, why don't you tell me in the 10 times program, we talk, whatever you did last year when you start, let's just multiply the amount of money that you've made or your profits. You can use any 10 times goal that you want. They write that down. I can see them starting to get nervous. And then I say, but give yourself 25 years to achieve this. How many of you could achieve this in 25 years? And, they almost look at you dismissively. If I have 25 years, I don't need 25 years for this goal. And I said, how much time would you need? And I said, I could do it in 10. I said, well, isn't that wonderful? You get a 10 times achievement in 10 years and you still have 15 years change left over. It's kind of funny because one of the things, I don't know if you've observed this or not, Peter, is that everybody that I've ever met and talked to in depth is kind of unique in their take on time. Human beings don't experience time in the same way at all. They have different structures for dealing with time. But by establishing this 25-year model, transformation model for yourself, I think you gave other people a lot of comfort that they could do this year by year with A360. We have well over 100 people who are full members right from the beginning. And they realize that they don't have to do everything every year, but they're going to get a chance next year to come back, check their progress. And they won't feel that they're being left behind because you're going to come back in January of every year and you're going to give them a full report on what's progressed during the previous 365 days. And there's new things and there's new ways of thinking about the new things. And that's very comforting that they have this structure that's progressive. It's getting exponentially greater. Just think about the exponential in terms of the size of the group. We've gone from 150 to 360. That's pretty good.
Yep. And we'll cap it in terms of the physical audience at 360, though the A360 digital will enable us to hopefully bring in thousands of individuals who can't afford the full experience and want to come in.
Yeah.
We're going to be starting this year to brand A360 and our 25-year journey as a countdown to the singularity. Ray Kurzweil talks about the singularity as that moment in time where AI exceeds human capacity across all fronts. It's typically referred to as artificial general intelligence, AGI, where computers are asking questions we can't even understand and answering them. But those who do stick with me and you, since you're part of this, over these next remaining 20 years, we're effectively doing a countdown to the singularity, and we're going to be seeing year on year on year this incredible march forward and how we're transforming every aspect of our lives and our businesses. And I'm prepared to hold the hands of these amazing CEOs who are the members and say, this is where you need to be investing, this is where you need to be divesting, this is where the opportunities are. And, we're going to see the explosion of blockchain and cryptocurrencies during this time. We're going to see AI seeping into every device that we have. Everything is going to become smart. And it's amazing.
I'm just going to put something out, Peter, for you to consider. But I've been, in my own way, long before I met you, I got started in the early 1970s with a concept or a context that this little device called the microchip was going to turn everything on its head. And I actually had a presentation in the late 1980s called The Great Crossover, and it showed a 50-year crossover from 1975 to 2025, when just about every way of organizing in society, all areas of activity, fundamentally, they were going to be taken apart and put back together again. That's really what's happening. We experience it year by year and quarter by quarter. But the thing that I came out of that was the fundamental working principle that in order to be open to the change happening outside of you, that there's got to be areas within you and the way you operate that don't change. In other words, your openness to change is that there are certain areas about how you conduct yourself as an individual that don't change. And one of the big things for me is my relationship with Babs, which we celebrated our first meeting last Sunday night, 7 o'clock, August 13th, 1982. And that's been a fixed thing for me, the working relationship with Babs. And that allows me to be very, very open. Strategic Coach program is another thing that is a fixed thing. So how do you approach that? Because you can't be changing in all areas of your life all at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because your ability to stretch and do risky big things is a function of what you don't change and what you don't stretch and what is not risky. Something has to be sort of your foundation. We need to have enough certainty, as our friend Tony Robbins would say, to really allow uncertainty into your life. And so I think about that, right? So Abundance 360 is definitely something that gives me certainty. It's something that I plan on, and I structurally organize my life around that thing. I structurally organize my life around A360 every year. My amazing team that runs A360, from Marissa and Greg and Kelly and Sydney and AJ and Bree. I mean, so that group is like stability. I think my mindset is a part of my stability, the way I think about the world. Singularity University and X Prize both are vibrant, solid, multi-decade-long organizations that all buttress my life. Obviously, my family as well. But at the end of the day, it's really hard for someone to take on so many risky things without having some enough certainty and stability in their lives. Yeah. And I think as I've grown older, that's much easier for me. I think you've got sort of bimodal risk curves in your life. Early on in your life, in sort of college, grad school, you're willing to take more risks before you have too much responsibility. And then you start to stabilize. And then as you have done well financially or reputationally, you can start to leverage those things and start taking more risks again in your life.
I experience this as sort of a flux thing. I notice that I don't have a constant in my life, but I think of it as like a gyroscope. The early principle of a gyroscope was to make sure that a plane could keep itself on course, even when you didn't have sight lines and you were getting all sorts of adverse weather and that. What I've tried to establish is balancing mechanisms, okay? And one of the big concepts that we have in coach is called the gap in the gain. And that is that people get out of whack in terms of their response to change when they start measuring themselves against some sort of ideal. And what the ideal does, it tells them they haven't made any progress at all.
Infinity away.
Yeah, you're an infinity away and you're never any closer. So people will commit suicide over that feeling that they've spent their life striving and striving. Other people think they're great. Other people think they've made great progress. But when they measure their own life, it's against an ideal which cannot be achieved. But if they just measure backwards from where they've come in many different areas of their life, automatically they say, gee, I've made real progress here.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I catch myself in the gap a lot. And that concept that I learned at Coach is really critically important to me as well, because anybody who's a member of Strategic Coach or Abundance 360 is self-motivated and has big dreams. And if you are measuring against the ultimate potential, if you're measuring yourself against Jeff Bezos or measuring yourself against Luke Skywalker, it's hard to get there. Not impossible, but really, really hard.
Mainly you're screwed.
Mainly you're screwed. But on the other hand, sometimes, and I have my closest, dearest friends, I was just at the Singularity University Global Summit in San Francisco, 2,000 people, amazing CEOs around the world, literally from 60 countries in the room there. And I'm walking around, and I had a couple of friends stop me along the way and say, hey, Peter, look around. Do you realize how incredible this is? And you're not scrambling and you're not racing to do anything. It's just happening, and it's like, so thankful. And the same thing at X Prize. So when you can compare against the past, and I think that with A360, we're entering our 6th year compared to the first year, extraordinary compared to where we're going to be in 20 years. Actually, I can't even fathom where we're going to be in 20 years, so I can't be lost there.
Yeah, and that's why the 1-year framework ahead is really good, because you can put out very, very concrete measurements of how January of 2018 is going to be better than January of 2017. I mean, that's the accessible possible. Everything that you want to achieve next January is actually possible because you know the relationships, you know the topics, you know the site, you know the team, and everything is accessible. There's still organizational processes and issues that you have to move quickly about. But then when you get there, the big thing is not to measure what the ideal Abundance 360 could be, and, oh, gee, we're not doing this and not we're doing this. But, hey, let's just look at what we actually did.
Yeah, especially as compared to last year incrementally. And so my job is to always outdo myself last year, and that's something that can be done versus trying to go 10 times bigger than last year.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's been a great trip for us. I mean, you've got probably 2 or 3 big things. I would say the ease with which you view you. I remember last January, it was the day before the start of Abundance 360, and I was looking across at the table, and you were just reviewing your presentation slides for the screen. And I've never seen you more relaxed. You were joking with everybody. And I have a very vivid memory of what it was like the day before the very first session. A very different individual, a very different person I was looking at. From my standpoint, I'm really noticing it now. It was almost like for 3 or 4 or 5 years, we weren't seeing a real tangible jump as a result of key team members. We have about 15 or so that come out and support Peter's team. every year, but they take in the content of the Abundance 360. But we're really noticing it this year, how open-minded they are to technological change. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the whole creation of the new Game Changer program, which is starting. And it's going to be I just did a Zoom panel discussion yesterday, and I had Matt Lair, I think you know Matt from San Diego, Stephen Palter was on it, and we had 3 others. Dean Jackson was on it. And it was really interesting. They're entrepreneurs, but all of them are sucking up technology like mad right now. Mm-hmm. But again, I've got them because of the new tool using your material, that they're working with the accessible possible. They're not thinking, oh, gee, I have to be doing holograms as soon as I possibly can. So I'm seeing a tremendous entry of technology as usable, accessible things that we can put to work right away, and we're going to get the exponential impact quarter by quarter as we go forward.
It's interesting, right? That whole concept of the accessible possible is so powerful because there's the notion that we're so comfortable with what we have and what we're used to using, and the desire or the energy investment to move just to the accessible possible is something there's a little bit of a barrier. But my job each year at A360 is to show the accessible possible. And it's to say, listen, this is now possible, this is accessible, and this is how you do it, and this is the value. And it's like the first time you used email or the first time that you used the web, and then you learn it, it becomes part of your tool sets. You perhaps let some things go. I know this year, for example, we're going to be bringing 3 companies, 3 technologies in each of AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, AR, VR, sensors, networks. And I want to show people in each of these exponential fields, this is what the cutting edge is that you can use right now. Here's the company that you can buy it from, rent it from, learn it from, and just to open up to people what they can do.
Well, it's been a joy so far for me. The cross-fertilization between Coach and Abundance 360 has been very intriguing to me. So, I think it's going to become exponentially greater year by year, but each year we work with something new that now becomes available to us to make progress before the next Abundance 360.
So my conclusion here for the entrepreneurs who are listening here is taking on a 25-year mindset, and just that notion of it's transformative for you and your company, and just allowing yourself to relax into that 25 years, knowing that you want to outdo in this next year what you did last year. But when you can say, my MTP, my mission, my moonshot, whatever it is over a 25-year time frame, it gives you permission to dream even bigger and gives you permission to enjoy each and every year rather than being stressed out by how come you didn't achieve the impossible immediately.
Yep. Much more to talk about that. So we've got a lot of exciting topics for our next podcast. So we'll see you then.
Fantastic, pal. Look forward to it.